Hi everyone. How do I? Okay. So I'm starting with some food for thought before we get more serious. An example. Last Christmas, Google launched this fun little project that was called Santa Tracker, where you could go and see how on Christmas you can go and see how Santa moves on Google Maps. Okay, and so when you open the page before Christmas, you get this message, then come back on the 24th and see Santa. This was translated into many languages, including Ukrainian, and this was the result of the Ukrainian one. Am I the only one who sees a problem with the translation? If you don't understand Ukrainian, I'll explain. So the translation is, come back on the 24th of December and see how the Father Frost, the local Ukrainian holiday character, moves around. The problem is that Father Frost is supposed to come on the 31st of December or on the New Year's Eve, all right? So, I mean, who is going to use this exact page when it's not really actually localized? And so who can we blame? Can we blame the translator or the reviewer or the editor? Because they actually did their work perfectly, right? That was probably somewhere a rule that Santa Claus should be localized into Ukrainian as Father Frost. However, nobody thought about the date. And, you know, there are no grammatical mistakes, nothing like that. So technically, it's perfect localization according to Google standards. But, you know, the loser is the user because it's actually not usable, and children are not going to understand why the Father Frost is coming on the 24th of December, which is not even a holiday in Ukraine. Now, another mistake on another part of the spectrum, which is on BlaBlaCar. So for a while, I thought maybe I would ride share to Dnipro to UTIC, and I was looking for rides from Lviv to Dnipro, and I found this man who was going from Lviv to Dnipro twice a week for a year. And I thought, okay, this is probably a bus driver who is trying to find clients through BlaBlaCar, and that's not allowed. And so I decided to flag him. There's this flag button, and say that, okay, this is a bus driver. And I get this message. If you don't understand Ukrainian, this is supposed to say, oops, you know, thank you for informing us, but the sentence is actually nonsensical. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. It's basically an oversight of somebody who translated this. You know, it's hard to understand what it means. It's just a bag of words. But the difference between this example and that one is that this is not actually very crucial for using the website. You know, it's not important information because it's supposed to just say, okay, thank you, and you press okay. Whereas this one is now completely unusable, right? Now, before I explain why this happened, I'll talk about myself. So I'm a localization specialist at BlaBlaCar. It is a ride-sharing service. If you don't know what it is, if you go to another city and you have a free space in your car, you can go to the service and find people who don't have a car but want to go with you, and you can share fuel costs. And some other more elusive advantages is that, first of all, it decreases the amount of cars on the roads. It decreases the amount of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. It also decreases the noise pollution and stuff like that. So BlaBlaCar is now functioning in 22 countries, including Ukraine, and most of Europe and some South America. And there is a very specific way how BlaBlaCar launches their service in a new country. I've just realized I was talking not into the microphone. I'm sorry. Okay, so there is a specific process. First, what the functions that we see now on the Ukrainian website are very basic, right? We can offer a ride, we can look for a ride, and we can exchange messages. But that is nearly not all that the service can can offer. Those are only basic functions. And why they exist right now is because when you launch a project, you want to see how it's going to do in this exact market, right? You want to see if it's going to be popular, if you need to develop it later. So it makes literal economic sense to actually invest in professional translation, right? Which is why these basic functions were translated by non-professionals, by whomever was at the office and who had a free minute. They just tried to fill the translations. Okay, the next one we have like a substantial user base, we introduce booking. And with booking, it becomes a bit more difficult because this booking is a bit more hard to understand than the basic functions. And it makes sense to hire a language specialist who would make everything clear and understandable and without any mistakes like we saw before that. And then once we have booking, we have online payment, which is actually even more important because people don't like to do transactions on shady websites with bad translations. All right, so what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it makes sense to not use professionals for websites that don't really have resources for that kind of translation. Okay, so before that, I was working in a localization process that was very much basic and classic. But when I started working with BlaBlaCar, it was completely different. And it was a completely novel approach. And I saw that it actually improved the quality quite a bit. And I'm going to try and explain exactly what I like about this new process. So the communication. I think we can all agree that instant feedback is always good for translation, right? And why it's possible in BlaBlaCar? Well, even though the company is quite large and it's international, it still retains that kind of a non-horizontal startup structure, right? Which means that it needs to hire proactive people who will want to solve problems that are maybe not in their job description. So I don't have this chain of people when I have a query. I need to go to my manager, then the manager needs to go to vendor's manager, and vendor's manager needs to go to product manager of the client, and the product manager needs to go to the developer who never answers linguist questions because they don't care. All right, and also in BlaBlaCar I have a localization specialist, a localization engineer, who is a wonderful buffer between the developer and the linguist, because he is both partially developer, partially linguist, and he understands what's going on. Okay. Okay, another pro I'm going to illustrate with this company's motto, one of the company's motto, in trust we trust. It doesn't only relate to the nature of the service, because if you get into a stranger's car to go to another city, you need to trust them. But it also goes for how the work is organized. I have access to everything I have translated before and everything I will translate in the future at any point in time. Okay, so which means that I can, if I think that I made a mistake, I can go back and change it, and I can actually publish it into the website to make it online instantly, right? And this is the translator can do that. And that allows for another pro, and I'm going to illustrate it with another motto: fail, learn, succeed, right? This is called regression. This is the first time that I've met the process of regression in localization in BlaBlaCar. What it means, I like to think about it as iteration in agile web development. You know what it means when you publish a product that is not perfect, it's not yet polished, it's not complete. You publish it, and then you, on the basis of user feedback, you see exactly which functions are a priority, on which you should work on, and which functions are not. Because it's impossible to predict correctly the priority of features. And with regression, when you publish the translation and you get feedback from users that something is unclear, you can actually go back at any point and change it. Okay, another point I'm going to illustrate by this another motto is done is better than perfect, that means no micromanagement. Okay, so what I think is that in localization there exists this myth that if the more rules you give to the translator, the faster the translation is going to be and the less queries there's going to be. When in reality, the result that we get is that translators spend too much time thinking whether their translation corresponds to your 500 rules, and they don't focus on the style you need to make a website sound good. All right, and I'm going to illustrate this. The excess. This is not the illustration of the excess of micromanagement, but just another kind of fail where this micromanagement does not help. Okay, this is from Microsoft Office Word. When you do spell check in Microsoft Word, and you go back and edit the text, the spell check pauses, and you can resume it after it's paused. Whereas in the Ukrainian translation, the resume is translated as resume. Okay. So what are you going to do? Microsoft has a very strict QA process, but it didn't help to prevent this. So there is obviously something wrong, right? And you can imagine that they probably will add this as a rule to the style guide that, okay, please remember that resume can be also resume. Please pay attention. But this kind of mistake is not likely to happen ever again. And you have already made it. And there is no way for the translator to go back because Microsoft doesn't give you that option. So what are you going to do? And if you don't know English and you can't really deduce that this was a mistake, what do you do in Office? You start wondering, why do I need to upload my resume if I'm doing a spell check? Okay. So just to illustrate, the only document I have from BlaBlaCar is 2 pages long. It's called the tone of voice, and it consists of 3 words. Our content should be trustworthy, simple, and friendly. And that's it. And I need to decide what that means for my language, right? No other rules. All right, but there are certainly cons, as in everything. And I'm adding cat tools here, but it doesn't only relate to BlaBlaCar. I think it relates to most localization processes at the moment. At the moment, we are migrating to PhraseUp. I have nothing good or bad to say about PhraseUp. It's a lot like many browser tools, online tools. I do have some negative things to say about all online tools, and that is that they're not good for the Ukrainian language because whereas I think migrating to browser translation is good for the future of localization, but the actual language technology is lagging behind of the CAT technology, which means that for Ukrainian and many other languages, I'm sure, there is no way to do efficient QA check or spelling check online. The best spelling check for Ukrainian is in Office, which means that I need to have my translation offline somehow. And when it's all online, it's either bad quality or I need to spend a lot of time reviewing it myself. Yes, I've already. And also, most QA tools, most CAT tools don't have an efficient way to propagate matches. They don't find matches well as say MamQ or Trados, which makes my work longer and harder. Okay, so another con is obviously non-professional translation that we all see. So it's still on the website, and everybody here understands why non-professional translation is not really good to work with. The biggest problem I have with it is that, again, I cannot propagate the matches because even if there is a match, it's low quality, right? So I cannot really just insert it. I need to review it anyway. All right. However, this doesn't mean that I condemn non-professional translation as a whole. Okay, we all know that Facebook is crowdsourced. Facebook's translations are crowdsourced, and it actually works very well for Facebook. And why does that happen? Before that, there are localization mistakes on Facebook. It took me like 3 minutes to find all of this, right? So we see that here one button is translated differently in 3 different places. Here is the localization is only partial. Here we have different terms, one term translated differently, so this is not consistent. Here we see the classic number does not correspond to the noun form mistake. However, I still believe that even if the translation is not perfect, it's still great for Facebook. And why? Well, first of all, Facebook doesn't have too many features, and even the features that it has, we use only like maybe 5% of them. For example, did you know about this sports section in Facebook? Because I didn't, and I don't think anyone uses it, right? We only use like post, browse, like, comment. And even those features are all illustrated, and this is my point here, are all illustrated by icons, right? So even if there is a complete fail somewhere in translation, you can still figure out what to do just by looking at the icons. And also, just basically, the service is simple. We all know how social networks work. You don't really need a lot of explanation there. Okay, so what about crowdsourcing for BlaBlaCar? Well, here the problem here is that if we're going to, at some point, introduce online translation, we need everything to be really super nice, super representative, right? Super serious, because people do not like to give their money to some weird service that they do not trust, okay? Now, this another point is that all new this is a fairly new concept, and it must be constantly explained what ride sharing is. Also, we need to make it functional. We need to introduce a lot of complicated systems, like the feedback system. So, the feedback system of BlaBlaCar is if you leave. If you get a review from your passenger, you cannot really see it before you leave a review for that passenger back. Okay, and that is hard to understand, and a lot of users don't understand it. And to reduce the amounts of calls to our support department, we really need to make sure that this is really understandable. And the last point is that if we compare the average age of Facebook users and BlaBlaCar users, because we need car owners, right? The average age of BlaBlaCar users is higher, and they don't always understand interface, right? They need a lot of text, a lot of good, very understandable text to use the service. Now, to sum up, do I have a lot of time? To sum up, yesterday we were talking about the problems that at the moment we localize for companies that do agile web development. However, we need to differentiate between localizing for agile web development and agility in localization, because those are different, and agility in localization can actually help you do better. For the first concept you can introduce to make your work process more agile is prioritization, okay? Usability over linguistics. I feel like very many linguists in translations are like language purists and perfectionists, even though when it comes to websites, it doesn't really matter all that much. And another just last example from BlaBlaCar. Somebody noticed that this number placeholder is not correct, right? This 039 shouldn't really be there. And so as perfectionists, we decided that, okay, this must go, we should fix it. But I discovered that I cannot really fix it. It's hard-coded, and I need to contact developers. And so developers responded, okay, well, we are looking at our user feedback, and we don't see that anybody ever had a problem with these numbers, didn't understand why these numbers are here. Do you think there will ever be a problem for somebody to enter their phone number when these numbers are there? To which I had to respond, the probability is close to 0, but I want the page to look pretty. So, And then I realized we just exchanged 6 emails for a problem that will never ever, improve usability. So you need to prioritize, and it's not only about numbers. It's about translation overall. Do you need to do linguistic QA to catch a missed comma when it's not going to make your site more understandable? That is the question. So, and this is the motto that kind of illustrates that, don't be vain, don't be a perfectionist when you are trying to make a service for a user. Be realistic. Okay, the second point is interaction. I'm not sure how one would introduce this for large localization projects, which is why the name of my presentation is about small projects, right? I believe that when it comes to websites, it's really easy to do to get better instant feedback when you sort of diminish this really long chain of people. And again, rapid iteration and refactoring. These terms refer to code, but I think we can do something really similar when it comes to regression, that I've already understand that you can go back and you can change it, and you can change your mind. And for example, when creating a glossary, I choose a term that later turns out to be not so good for all translations, I can basically go back and change it throughout everything, right? Throughout all the website. Can I do that in Microsoft? Very unlikely. Okay, and we're coming to the end. I feel like when we focus on, when we sort of go crazy over quality and all that stuff, we are forgetting about why we are doing the translation, and we are doing it for the user, right? Because when we do IT translation, we are translating websites and we are making them more usable for new areas in the world. And so when you focus on the user, it all becomes very clear that you just need to make everything really friendly, engaging, and just very clear, and not perfect. Okay, so just to close our localization panel for this year, I think that when this another last final motto of BlaBlaCar, fun and serious. When you like doing your job, right? When you do not feel stressed, you get when your employers do not feel stressed, you get serious results. Whereas when you are extremely serious about your job, you get results that are just funny. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Does it work? No. Thanks a lot for your presentation. It was like a bridge between agile methodologies and linguistic work. It's the first time I see something like that. My question. I was question about how you deal with interaction between several translators, for example, between two Ukrainian translators, one, for example, from you, and the second, for example, from me, and I have a different vision of what should be fun, what should be clear, and what style should be friendly,
Well, that's the point. When the project is small enough, one person can handle it, so one linguist can handle it, so not have a competitive translator. But I can answer your question. I do have communication specialists. I do have user communication specialists, and they also have an idea of what is clear and what is better. But I also believe that they deal better with style, and I deal better with linguistics. And this way, when I listen to them and they listen to me, we come to a kind of a conclusion. And that is the beauty of the absence of this long chain, because I can talk to the company and to the people directly. I can understand what exactly do they mean. They don't have to write me a long style guide explaining what we want our service to sound like. I know what they want, and we can just communicate and come to a result that's perfect for everyone.
May I have the second question, please? We have the situation in text several weeks ago where we have translation from technical manual. You know, it's very interesting reading, and it was from English into Belarusian, and the previous translation was fully done in, I don't know how called, old Belarusian style, Belarusian style, and the editor go and fix regression, you know, and write all our text in new style. And after that, we have DTP our document and see that several parts of this document is a new style, and several other parts were fixed into the new style. And we have a lot of problems with such not inconsistency in whole document, you know. And for example, you have several tasks, and how can you fix regression of whole translation base? You know, it's a lot of work, aside work, you know.
Yes, it's a side work, and I actually usually don't charge for it. I charge for translation, and you know, we also do IT testing, and so a bunch of people. I meant UI testing, right? So a bunch of people do UI testing, and I do UI testing from the linguistic point of view. So so after all the translations are published, I review the website and I see which is not consistent. Where are the translations from 2 years ago that were done by non-professionals, and where are my translations? And I and I go back and change them. And just to, you know, whenever I have the time, I try to be as responsive as possible. But you know, the point is, if I as one person can handle a project that, you know, there's a lot of content. There's not that much content, but that's a lot. And you know, when you talk about one document, it's very easily fixable. You know, you just have, because I'm not a company, I'm one person. I'm not thinking in terms of profitability. I'm thinking, you know, how to make this website usable and just user friendly.
And did you use translation memories?
Yes, I'm creating my own translation memories just from my own translations, because as I already mentioned, non-professional translation does not allow you to propagate matches.
Did you share this translation memories suppliers who translate the content, or it's only for your usage?
Which suppliers exactly?
Who translates the content? Does they have the access to this translation memory?
I translate the content. Do you know what I mean? I basically. The small-scale projects allow one person to do everything, and also you need to hire a person that is able to do everything, right? Who is not only just linguistically oriented, but also knows something about development.
And basically, you are translated from English to Ukrainian, right?
Yes, and sometimes into Russian. And you know, we do not have linguistic QA, but we do have QA from my communication managers, because they, instead of just looking for some fails that do not correspond to the style guide, they are looking for the style, right? They're looking for when something is not clear.
So your master language is English, right?
No. My first language is Ukrainian.
No, I mean, when you translate from English to Ukrainian,
yes.
So you translate from master language English. And you just mentioned some issues with matches in CAT tools. Can you provide example what kind of matches in translation memories you mean?
Well, I was talking about the fact that online browser tools just do not have that technology to really show you well, you know, the partial matches, I mean, right? So when you have 65% match, it doesn't really highlight the words that are the same. It doesn't really help you. Whereas when you use this in MemQ, it's much more efficient. It's just not introduced for some reason into this kind of tools.
Спасибо.